there's this idyllic view that everything was great prior to the Europeans, but everything was not great. It was a very hard life for a lot of Indigenous Australians, and we do often marvel at the fact that Indigenous Australians were able to survive for so many thousands of years without any of the technology that we had, with I guess really Stone Age technology, literally.
Yep.
But what we forget, now exactly how many there were on the mainland, no one really knows. 300,000, 350,000, no one really knows. But what we do know, and it's universally testified by settlers and spoken of by Aborigines themselves, is that one way that they survived as a semi-nomadic people was by infanticide. Infanticide was something baked into Aboriginal culture, and in a way it had to be, because it's very difficult to be nomadic and bringing about 3, 4 little children. And again, when you don't have modern technology to grow food in vast amounts, food is pretty scarce. And it's probably the case, as Geoffrey Blaney said, that a lot of the Aborigines lived a lot better than a lot of the Europeans at the time, the poorer Europeans. But one of the ways they were able to survive was, quite frankly, keeping their population low by killing their own babies, usually by strangulation or some kind of suffocation. How many? Again, no one really knows, but historians and witnesses suggest that at its highest, it might even have been one in, I've got the figure here, possibly 1 in 3 babies killed pretty much upon birth. And so one of the things that allowed them to survive so long was infanticide. That is nothing that we should lament ending. That is not a cultural attribute that we should be sort of saying, it's a pity that finished.
And the awful truth is that if you're a girl, you were more likely.
Absolutely.
Than if you were a boy.
The universal testimony of colonials, and colonials highly sensitive and highly sympathetic with Aborigines, the universal testimony was that Aboriginal women were treated absolutely appallingly.
The early records are quite compelling on that.
Oh, the records right from the beginning, people's diaries, also well into the 20th century, noting the way that women were savagely beaten around the head, the way that women were ritually abused, raped, used as diplomatic currency to garner favour from one chief to another, send over a woman for their use.
The Europeans used to do that.
Well, that's an important thing to keep in mind, that certainly Europeans are certainly not immune from criticism, but there's a sense in which, look, the way women were treated was even abhorrent to the Europeans, who, many would say in the 18th century didn't have particularly enlightened views about women. That's another debate. But we are talking about really horrific treatment of women. And that is something that certainly many of the white people try to rescue women from and sort of bring them into Christian reserves to protect them from that kind of treatment. And as the brilliant anthropologist Peter Sutton said in his book, The Politics of Suffering, he said, in all his decades living with Aboriginal communities, he never once came across a woman who longed for the old days to return. They were absolutely brutal and savage for women. And it's a very uncomfortable thing to say, and I don't say it to put down Indigenous Australians or anything like that. It is just a fact.